All right. Hello. I am finally live. Thank you so much for being patient. I have been working on some new things, like some new setup things. So, one, I got a green screen behind me. So now my background stays and I can move around. Then I also got a microphone. So, let's just make sure that you all can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, Rachel. Hello, Gwendolyn. Hoping you guys can hear me. I didn't realize that um, for the YouTube purposes, that when I'm recording from my computer, that it made the sound very far. So if I'm not wearing a headset, which I don't feel like wearing, I've been having these headaches, so I don't feel like wearing that. So it's made the sound without the headset makes the sound very far. And so I was used to recording videos on my phone, on my iPhone. So now I had to get a microphone so that my videos, the quality, the audio quality sounds better. So thank you guys so much. So first of all, I want to apologize for last Wednesday. If anybody was waiting on me last Wednesday, I sincerely apologize. Your girl had to go to the emergency room. As I said, that I've been having these headaches, and last Wednesday I had a headache for 6 or 7 straight days in a row. And while I was in the office, my vision went blurry. All kinds of things broke out and happened. So I decided I called the teledoc. She said she wanted me to get checked out in the ER. So I ended up going to the ER, and my mom is a former ER nurse, and so she told me don't go during the day. She told me to wait until the evening. So that's what happened. I went to the ER. Hi, Facebook user. I don't know who you are because you didn't give Facebook permission. So you can either come over to YouTube so I can see your pretty name, or you can go back to Facebook, give Facebook permission to let StreamYard have your name, or you can just tell me who you are and I'll know it's you. But I won't know it's you compared to someone else later on down the line. But hello. So yeah, that's what happened last week. Um Went to the ER. I was in and out of there quickly. They gave me some pain meds. I intravenously had a CAT scan. Everything was good. It's just some supplements that I'm taking. So, um, that's the beauty of getting old. So let's jump right in. Oh, it's Reggie. What you doing on Facebook, Reggie? You're supposed to be over in YouTube land, but that's okay. Take your time, sweet pie. It is okay. I am not tripping. All right. So, no, it didn't. I can't see your name. Look, it just says Facebook user. See that? I don't know who Facebook user is. Oh, I might have to change the color of my banner. Kind of clashes with my background. All right. So, let's get started. We're going to go to the book. Let me move this down some for a second. All right. So we're going to go to the book. I'm going to add that to the stream, and we're going to make that solo because you don't need to see me. And last week we talked about the journal. There you go. Hey, you made it on time. Welcome, welcome. Let me get some water before we get started. Welcome. Thanks, Reg. You like the screen? I like it much better. But I will tell you, you can't wear a derivative of green. So I don't think you can wear green, obviously. And you can't wear yellow. And I'm willing to bet you can't wear blue because yellow and blue makes green. I had on a yellow shirt before this, and the camera, it went through my yellow shirt. So I'm thinking that you can't wear any of the primary colors that make up green either because there's a green screen back there. So anywho, last week we talked about the journal and all about how to fill out the journal and how to complete the journal. So this week we're venturing into the different types of notarization. And the first one we're going to talk about are acknowledgments. I would say acknowledgments are probably the most common. And when you're doing loan signing, you get both. Typically, the title company's documents are all acknowledgments, and the lender documents are jurats. So let's dive right in. So for those who have the book, we're on page 91, chapter 8. And those of you who have it opened up online, we're on chapter 8, page 91. Let's go. So in this and the 4 chapters that follow, we will tie together the concepts outlined in the first 7 chapters. So now we're going to pull it all together, and we're going to present them as a complete notary act, as the complete acts. The common types of notarization: acknowledgment, jurat, copy certification, and proof of execution will be discussed in depth, and the essentials for performing each will be explained by step from beginning to end. Let me get my primer ready too. All right, so the most common notary act is the acknowledgment. They say the acknowledgment is the most prevalent, and the average notary public will perform far more acknowledgments than any other acts combined. All right, since an acknowledgment provides strong evidence that a signature on a particular document is genuine, this notarization is required by law for a variety of important documents, from deeds to power of attorneys to loan agreements. For documents to be accepted by county recorders, the acknowledgement of signatures before a notary is extremely crucial. Deeds, loan agreements, and other papers relating to ownership of real estate, for example, must have their signatures acknowledged so that they may be regarded as authentic before they are placed in the public record. And if you look here on the side, it tells you that, ooh, don't look at that nail polish though. But if you look here on the side, let's point with the pencil. It says the acknowledgement helps assure that a signature was not forged or made while the signer was coerced or incompetent. And remember, that's one of our main roles, is to make sure that the person was not forced to sign. All right, give me a second here. I gotta move my phone because I didn't bring my stand over here. So hold on, I'm gonna move some things around really quickly. All right, there we go. And hold on one more time. I need to bring the phone out some. There we go. All right. Bring the camera out, I should say. All right. So 3 facts are certified. The primary function of an acknowledgement is positive identification of the document signer, verifying that the person who signed the document is in fact the person named in it. To do this, the notary certifies 3 things. Number 1, personal appearance. The document signer must appear in person before the notary at the time of the notary act. Number 2, positive identification. The notary must positively identify the signer. Number 3, the signer must acknowledge the notary that he or she signed the document. So when you're explaining the difference between an acknowledgement and a jurat, you want to present the acknowledgement, or what an acknowledgement is that, and this is what I normally say, I say that an acknowledgement is the document that proves you appear before me, I properly identified you, and you acknowledge your signature on the document. That's all I say. I say these 3 things exactly every single time. All right, I want to pull this out just a tad bit more. Hold on. I usually have this all set up, but here we go. I want to be able to see this side as well. All right. So Additionally, many acknowledgement certificates require the certification of other facts by the notary. For example, determining the authority of the signer to act in a claim representative capacity is often a requirement in many states, and some states require signers to take an oath and affirmation in conjunction with an acknowledgement. So, um, yes, some acknowledgments do have other certifications that we are doing, and you will sometimes see that it will the certificate will be an acknowledgement, and it will have a component of an oath or affirmation in it as well. And those are typically called hybrid certificates. I treat them as jurats. Once I see sworn and subscribed, I just treat it as a jurat. But you can document a hybrid acknowledgement as both an acknowledgement and an oath and affirmation. So not the jurat at all, just acknowledgement with the oath and affirmation. All right. So on the side here, it just says an acknowledgement certifies the signer appeared before the notary, was identified, and that he or she signed the document. That's it. That's all the acknowledgement is. All right. This important area, the acknowledgement is the notary is obligated by law to verify any claims made in the certificate. For example, if the certificate states that the signer is known to me to be the president of a particular corporation, the notary must indeed know this to be true. So careful reading of the certificate will reveal any facts that the notary must verify. And I have a really cool example of that happened to me just today, where I'm going to share my picture, where I did a RON. I accepted a RON, and the lady had uploaded her driver's license as identification. However, on the second page of the RON, it seemed like I would need to notarize the RON, but in fact, it was just saying that I saw her passport. Well, she didn't have her passport uploaded to the platform. And so she went to go get her passport, and lo and behold, she couldn't find it. So I canceled that run. I'm not going to sign off on a document that says I certify that I saw a passport and I didn't see it. So, and if that document didn't need a stamp, however, I was acting in the capacity of a notary in the sense that I was certifying the document, the information was true and correct, in which it wasn't. So, with that being said, I um, did not go through with that signing. I ended up just canceling that signing altogether. All right. So you do want to read the certificate carefully to make sure that you're not certifying any information that you don't know. All right. So now, under personal appearance, as explained in Chapter 3, the document signer's personal appearance before a notary is the first step in any notarization. The signer must appear in person before the notary on the date and at the location, state and county, stated on the certificate. So, wherever you are, remember that is the venue and that should be on the certificate. Personal appearance means that the notary and the signer must be face to face when the notarization takes place. For traditional notarization, personal appearance means the notary and the signer are physically in the same room. For remote online notarizations, which are authorized in the state of Florida, the notary and the signer must meet via live audio video communications. All right. And a phone call cannot constitute as personal appearance, nor can a voice heard from an adjacent room, recognition of a familiar signature, a written note from an absent signer, or the casual, unsworn word of a third party about an absent signer's intent. So, personal appearance means just that they personally appear before you. And to be clear about the audio video communications technology, that is not FaceTime, that is not Zoom, that is not Google Meet. It is a authorized notarization audio video platform for the state of Florida. You cannot just have people appear before you all willy-nilly on FaceTime and think you're going to notarize that document. No, that's not how it works. All right. So, identifying the document signer. All right. So, Chapter 4 describes how to positively identify the document signer, which we went over. In performing acknowledgement, the notary must positively identify the document signer through either the notary's own personal knowledge of the signer's identity, the oath and affirmation of a credible identifying witness who personally knows the signer, or reliable identification document. So those are the only three ways. Remember, we already know that. All right. So acknowledge means to recognize as one's own. All right. I'm going to bring this down some just to make the words a little bigger. Slide. All right. Sorry. I don't want to give anybody a headache. There we go. That's better because I read it from the screen. So acknowledge means to recognize as one's own. In the act called an acknowledgment, the document signer recognizes before a notary public that the signature on a document is his or her own. The signer makes or gives the acknowledgement, and the notary takes, executes, or performs it. So we take the acknowledgement, or we execute the acknowledgement, or we perform the acknowledgement. The signer is the person who either gives it or makes it. All right. Since a signer usually will not know what to say to a notary and make an acknowledgement, the notary may help by asking, "Do you acknowledge that this is your signature?" or words to this effect. A yes constitutes the signer's acknowledgement. If a signer happens to sign the document in front of a notary, that action may be taken as tacit acknowledgement of the signature. So in an acknowledgement, it is not required that the notary watch the signature being made. And that's what this says over here. So on an acknowledgement, the signer can actually sign the document prior to bringing the document to you. If that is the case, then you must ask them, or you must have them make the acknowledgement by asking, "Do you acknowledge that that is your signature?" They will answer with yes. You perform the acknowledgement, or you execute the acknowledgement. But if they sign in your face, then we already know that that's we already know that that's their signature, or they are already acknowledging that's their signature because they signed it. All right. With an acknowledgement, the notary is not required to watch the signature being placed on the document. The document signer need only acknowledge having made the signature to the notary. While the signature does not have to be made in the presence of the notary, the signer always must personally appear before the notary to acknowledge the signature at the time of the notarization. The signature could have been made minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years before the signer brings the document to the notary, but they got to bring it to you in order to have it notarized. All right. And so we're going on to representative capacities. Sometimes it is necessary for one individual to sign as representative of another, usually as an attorney in fact or a guardian, or a legal entity such as a corporation, a partnership, a trust, or an officer, a partner, trustee. Documents signed in a representative capacity generally require special acknowledged certificates that specify who or what is being represented. Depending on state law or the wording of particular acknowledgement certificate, the notary may or may not be required to verify the signer's representative status. Determining a signer's authority to sign in a particular representative capacity may be done in several ways. The notary's personal knowledge, by documentary proof or vouching under oath and affirmation by the signer. Okay. So in order to determine authority, we can do that by either our personal knowledge. So if we know they're the CEO of that company and they're signing on as the CEO, or by documentary proof, or by them vouching under oath and affirmation that they are who they say they are and they can represent in that capacity. All right. So some states do not require notaries to require proof of a signer's representative capacity. Nonetheless, notaries in these states sometimes encounter certificates that require such proof. Completing these certificates legally obligates the notary to verify that a signer is empowered to act as described in the certificate. All right, so acknowledgment certificates. In taking an acknowledgement, the notary must complete a certificate that describes what has been certified. As with other notary acts, generally, acknowledgement certificates wording indicates the 3 facts certified by the notary, and we talked about those. So 1 is the personal appearance, 2 is the positive identification, and 3 is the signer's acknowledgement of their signature. All right. Note how the 3 signatures are embodied in a typical acknowledgement. So you got before me is number 1. That indicates physical presence. And then 2, positive identification would be right here. Personally known to me or proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence. And then 3 would be this section where it says to be the persons whose name is subscribed to within the instrument. So that's 1. That's number 3. Or actually, go down. They acknowledge that they executed it. So I have to read it all the way. And that's why I say you have to read it. So evidence to be the persons whose name is subscribed to within the, yes. So, and acknowledge that he or she, they executed it. So those are the three sections. All right. So just as we stated, the phrase before me is personal appearance. Personally known to me or approved by the basis of satisfactory evidence is positively identification. And then acknowledge that he, she, they executed is them acknowledging that it's their signature. All right. So a few terms occur repeatedly in an acknowledgement certificate instrument, which means document, the instrument means document. Within, which means attached. So that word within means attached. Foregoing means preceding, right? So anything that happened before. And then subscribe means which signed, which I always say that. Subscribe actually just means signed. That's why you don't look for that word when you're looking for a jurat. Subscribe is not the word you're looking for because that just means that it's signed. And then party and principal, which is the signer in a transaction. So either a signer can be either called a party or a principal. All right. So let's see. Thumbs up if you can hear me, or thumbs up if you're still there. If you're following along and things are going, thumbs up. Thumbs up. Let's take the name off. Thumbs up. No thumbs. Oh, there we go. We got a thumb. Just making sure everybody's awake. All right. So the acknowledgement certificate wording, the actual wording in acknowledgement certificates can vary for several reasons. First, there are differences in the law. Second, there are different representative capacities that a document signer may have. And those are like attorney in fact, corporate officer, trustee. Third, there are special circumstances such as when a signer has been identified by a credible identifying witness. And I'm sure we'll go through that in this book. Or when a person is unable to write his or her name, instead they sign by mark. And I've had both of those happen to me. All right. Oh, and so it says signature by mark will be covered in chapter 14. So that's good. I'm glad to be able to go over that. So at the bottom, it just says, if you're uncertain about which certificate to use, about what a certificate means, or about how to complete any particular certificate, the notary should refuse to perform the notarization. Now, we don't have to know or understand what the document is, the document portion is. We don't have to know, we don't have to understand that. But we must understand, we must know about the notary certificate. So if the certificate is confusing in any way, we need to either ask questions about it to the person who gave the certificate. So, like if you're doing a loan signing, you can call the signing service or the title company and ask them, or you just refuse to do the notarization. It's as simple as that. Because after all, you're putting your name on the line, you're putting your commission on the line, you're putting your bond on the line, you're putting your insurance on the line. So that's a lot to put on the line. So if you don't know, we need to be sure. All right. So some states prescribe specific wording for common acknowledgement certificates, and notaries must use only certificate wording that substantially complies with these formats. Some states prescribe no certificate formats at all and allow a wide range of wordings to be used. Notaries must be keenly aware of the state's requirements. Now, I don't know if Florida necessarily mandates the certificates that they have. However, it makes absolutely no sense to me why anybody would make up wording for a certificate when there's already certificates out there that are already created, already worded, and available for you to use. So, yeah. An out-of-state acknowledgement certificate may be used if it substantially complies with the form prescribed by law in the notary state. Notaries should read any pre-printed certificate wording carefully before signing it to make sure it's acceptable for use in their state. And this just jogged something in my memory. So while I don't think Florida has specific wording for the certificate, remember we do have 9 requirements for a notarial certificate that we do have, that we use. So those 9 things all have to be in that certificate. So I would think that with that said, that is the required wording. Those 9 requirements that we have. All right. So if certificate wording does not comply with the requirements of the notary state, the notary must either I lost my place. Oh, either write or type the approved standard wording on the document or attach a loose certificate containing the approved wording. Sometimes notaries are told that only the acknowledgement wording pre-printed on the bottom on the document is acceptable, or that a loose certificate is not to be used. Now, that's often the case in loan signings. Even so, if the wording does not comply, the notary must replace it with a certificate wording that does comply. As state appointed officials, notaries must follow laws of their own state. So no matter what they say, if the certificate does not comply, it doesn't fly. So we're going to give you this hot loose certificate, or we're going to correct it on the document. If it doesn't comply, either they can take it back and reword it and make it comply, or they can find a notary that can stamp that one. All right. Just about all states will recognize and accept for public recording documents that have been notarized in another state with that other state's prescribed acknowledgement wording, which we know that because a lot of the loan signings don't happen in the state that the company is in. So, all right. So now we're going to talk about the different types of certificates. So you got the short form acknowledgement certificate, and it's an alternate to a long form, obviously, or a standard one. The wording on the short form is very minimal, and it may not indicate that a signer was identified by the notary. So the use of the short form doesn't shorten the notary's obligation to verify the three things. I'll answer your question, Tiffany, at the end, if we can, or in a second. At the end of the chapter, I'll answer your question. So this is an example of a short form, and we've seen this where it just says it was acknowledged by blah, date, signature, right? Now, in the state of Florida, a short form won't fly because it's missing some of the wording that is required, namely how they provided or what type of identification they provided. So we would have to write that in. So if we get a notarization form, acknowledgement certificate that looks like this, we would have to write in the information that's missing. All right. So then the next one is an individual acknowledgement. This is for a person who's signing on their own behalf. This is the most common one that we'll always see is someone signing on their own behalf. And so everything on here is there. It says they provided satisfactory ID, but it doesn't have the type. So again, if that's not there, we will have to fill that in. The next one is an attorney in fact certificate. That's one when the person has authorization to sign legal documents on his or her behalf. So when you're answering your phone calls and talking to clients on the line and they're making their appointment with you, this is definitely one of the questions you want to ask, or more often than not, they will volunteer this information. So they'll say, yeah, I have power of attorney over so-and-so, and I'm going to sign a document. So you want to make sure that that you have the proper certificate just in case you get there and the document doesn't have the correct wording for an attorney in fact. So if you're doing a loan signing and someone is an attorney in fact, they will vet all of that stuff before we even get there, and they will make sure that the documents have the correct way to sign, the correct wording, all of that stuff. All right, next page. All right, so an attorney in fact signs a document for the principal. Oh, wait, let me go back up. So the attorney in fact gives an individual power to sign for another person. This power is called an attorney in fact, or the power to sign is called an attorney in fact, but this person is not an attorney or a lawyer. So just to be clear, attorney in fact just means that another person has the power over or authority to sign on behalf of someone else. So for example, if my mom was elderly and was no longer able to make any, decisions for herself, I could become her attorney in fact, meaning I can sign documents on her behalf. So that is what I'm not an attorney and I'm not a lawyer, but I am just an attorney in fact. All right. So the attorney in fact signs the document for the principal. Remember, the principal is the signer. So for example, it'll say David R. White, principal by Jennifer A. Peterson, attorney in fact. All right. So if you want to revisit that, go back to chapter 3, page 32. And when they sign, or with the certificate, will have that in there, the principal and the attorney in fact. So when notarizing an attorney in fact, the conscientious notary would ask to see the power of attorney document to verify that the signer does have the authority to act on behalf of the principal. Now, I will say you especially want to do this if they're elderly or, um, incapacitated in some form. And 9 times out of 10, the person who has a power of attorney, the signer, the principal, is incapacitated in some form. So you want to make sure that there's no fraud going on and that someone just doesn't tell you, yeah, I'm the attorney in fact, and you just go ahead and sign a document on their behalf. You would want to ask for something, an identification to prove that um, that is an actual attorney in fact. And I will probably even ask for identification for the principal just to make sure that that's their signature. So it doesn't hurt. All right. So the following is an example of an attorney in fact. So you can see in the bold, it says, so before me, my name, the undersigned notary public, personally appear, attorney in fact's name, personally known to me or proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence. Okay, let me get the pencil out of there. Clear up, would you? To be the person whose name is subscribed to the within instrument. So that means this instrument as the attorney in fact of the principal's name. And he or she acknowledged to me that he or she subscribed the principal's name thereto and his or her own name as attorney in fact. So when they sign, they're going to sign the actual person's name and then sign, and then say by their name, attorney in fact. So that's the proper way to sign. And again, that's back in chapter 3 if you want to go back. Then we got corporate acknowledgement certificates. And this is when a corporate officer or some other representative signs on behalf of a corporation. I don't know why this is going blurry on me. Maybe it's too close. Okay, there we go. Hold on. All right. A corporation is an entity under law with legal rights of a person. So a corporation is a person. It's treated like a person under the tax code. So doing a corporate acknowledgement is almost like being an attorney in fact, because you're signing on behalf of the corporation who is treated like a person. All right. So, and then it says, like a person, a corporation legally commits itself when a corporate officer or designated representative signs on behalf of the corporation. All right. So, such designated officers may include the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, an attorney in fact, and agent, among others. And so, as with an attorney in fact acknowledgement, the notary must require to determine that the person is in fact an officer or representative of the corporation, and has the claimed authority to sign the document. The certificate wording will indicate if this is required. Let's see. So drop down here. A typical corporate acknowledgement certificate is following, and then in the boldface is the information that we're interested in. So for a corporate, it says to be the person who executed the within instrument as the title. So as president, as vice president, on behalf of the corporation herein named, and acknowledge to me that the corporation executed it. Now, what do we use it for to require that they are who they are in the corporation? I have no idea. No idea. Now, if you're a small business owner, you can go to in Florida, you can go to sunbiz.org and you can print out a copy of your corporate setup in Sunbiz, or you can provide a copy of your articles of incorporation. Your name will be on there and all of the officers' names will be on there as well. That will work. I mean, if you have an ID badge with your role on there, your title on there, I think that would be acceptable. But I think that there has to be something that you use in order to have them sign on behalf of a corporation. And a corporation is not the same thing as an LLC. An LLC is not treated like a person. So we're talking about an absolute corporation with the words Inc. on the back of their business name or incorporated. All right. So then you got partnership acknowledged certificates. And so this is when a partner signs on behalf of a partnership. So this would be more like an LLC. Under law, partnership is an association of two or more persons called partners who agree to share profit and losses in a business venture. Like a corporation, a partnership may commit itself by signing a document. However, unlike a corporate document, which often bears the signature of only one corporate officer, a partnership document usually bears signature of all the partners. So this would be more geared to an LLC because LLCs are typically partnerships and not corporations. All right, let's see. So a typical partnership certificate follows here. And then the bolds is to be the person who executed the within instrument on behalf of the partnership herein named and acknowledged to me that the partnership executed it. So for a partnership, it's going to have all of the partners' names. So for that, I don't think you would need to have any type of identification because the partners' names will be listed. So for example, my LLC is a partnership and it's owned by my husband and myself. So if we were getting documents notarized and for whatever reason, I can't agree to something without my husband. So we would have both names listed on there and then it would be notarized. And also, I want to point out where it says personally appear, name, or names of partners. If there's more than one partner named in the document, you are typically notarizing both. And so you need to write both names on the line. So you wouldn't just write one name unless there's two notary blocks where they typed in one name and then another notary block and they typed in that name. You would type in both names on there or write them in, rather. All right, so then you got other representative acknowledgments. So there's all kinds of acknowledgments. So besides corporations and partnerships, there's other legal entities that may sign documents through a designated representative. For example, a trustee may sign a trust, sign for a trust, an executor for an estate, or a public officer for a public agency. So over here is the language for that type of certificate, and it's just to be the person who executed within as trustee, executor, public official on behalf of said trust, estate, public entity herein named and acknowledged to me that the trust, estate, public entity executed it. So that is for those types of certifications. All right. And then you have combined certificates. So it says occasionally attorney in fact, corporate and partnership acknowledgments are combined in special certificates to accommodate persons who are signing in more than one representative capacity. So for example, there are certificates for attorneys in fact, signing either for corporations or partnerships, certificates for corporations signing as attorney in fact for other corporations, and certificates for partnerships signing as partners in other partnerships, if that all makes sense. If that all makes sense. So the certificate below is one of those, and it just says to be the person who executed the within instrument as the title of officer. So as the president or vice president of Amazon, whatever corporation, and the corporation that executed the within document on behalf of, and then whatever partnership that person's signing on behalf of. So it can be to be determined LLC, the partnership that executed the within instrument and acknowledged to me that such corporation executed the same as such partners and that such partnership executed the same. So this one's much more complex, and I don't know how often we would ever see something like that, but you never know. So that's why I highly recommend having these types of books on hand, because you never know when you might need something. You never know when you might have a situation and you need to go and refer to something in writing to figure out what you need to do. It happens. All right. And so then you also have credible identifying witness acknowledged certificates. All right. So, as we talked about in chapter 4, when a signer is not personally known to the notary and does not have adequate ID, and it's nearly impossible for them to get ID, a credible identifying witness may be used to establish the identity of a stranger. In such cases, a special notary certificate, which is called a credible identifying witness acknowledgment certificate, that names the credible identifying witness, is sometimes used. All right. So it says it's not always necessary to use a credible identifying acknowledgement form. In many states, it suffices merely to indicate on the acknowledgement certificate that the signer's identity was proven on the basis of satisfactory evidence or words to that effect. Satisfactory evidence includes credible identifying witnesses and ID documents. Okay. So a typical credible identifying witness certificate is here. Proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence in the form of the oath and affirmation of who the witness is to be the persons whose names is subscribed within the instrument. And then I want to check something. So in Florida, we can either type or write the this certificate information on the notarized document, or it can be on a separate sheet of paper. It does not have to be on a loose certificate, but we can put it directly on the paper, indicated on the certificate. So we also have to say, hi Diane, I can see your name. We also have to indicate on a certificate the method that we use to identify the signer, which we already know that. And so if we're relying on credible witnesses, then we would select the phrase produce identification, and in the type, you're going to write in credible identifying witnesses. All right. So these are tricky. There's also an affidavit that the credible identifying witnesses can sign, and that we would keep as a notary. I did a YouTube video on that. So check that out on YouTube to hear more about that. You're so funny. All right. So then you got an all-purpose acknowledgement certificate. A lot of times loan signing or signing services call these APAs. They called it an APA for me, and I was like, what is an APA? I don't know. And so they told me it was an all-purpose acknowledgement certificate. So it doesn't have any indication of the person's title or any entity. It's just I guess it's basically like it serves all purposes. And you can see by the bold area says, and if applicable in the capacity shown, have been duly authorized to execute such instrument in such capacity. So they don't have to identify who they are in the company. They don't have to say they're the president or vice president. But they have to they have to swear, actually. If we go back up here, who by being duly sworn, did say that such person executed the foregoing instrument as the free act and deed of such person, and if applicable, in the capacity shown, having been duly authorized to execute such instrument. And then at the bottom it says the above certificate is an example of an acknowledgement where an oath and affirmation is required. With this particular certificate, the notary certifies that the signer has sworn rather than just acknowledged that he or she signed the document in a duly authorized capacity. When using this certificate, any notary must give the oath and affirmation without exception, even if the document is being notarized in a state where an oath and affirmation is not generally required. So, I don't know if it's required in Florida, but I always give an oath or affirmation when I am doing a jurat or anything that says sworn. This was kind of tricky because it doesn't have anything in there that says acknowledgement. In this one, it doesn't have anything that says acknowledged. So to me, off bat, I would think this was a jurat. But I guess the title of it being an all-purpose acknowledgement would make it an acknowledgement, and it doesn't matter as long as you issue as long as you give an oath. That's all that matters. And then there's some special stuff for California, and I don't think anybody is here from California, so we'll go right by that. If you're from California, put it in the chat. We'll go back. All right, so now we put together all the steps for performing an acknowledgement using an imaginary situation to illustrate the act. The first situation will be outlined and then the procedures will be detailed. You'll note that the steps are organized similarly through chapters 4 through 7, with some additional steps included from other chapters. So here's the situation. Judith M. Hill and her husband, David R. Hill, appear before the notary, Olivia P. Sims, in Arlington County, Virginia, on July 17, 2022, at 3:30 p.m. to acknowledge their signatures on a grant deed signed the previous day. Mr. and Mrs. Hill are from Pennsylvania and are not personally known to the notary. Mr. Hill offers as proof of identity a Pennsylvania's driver's license. Mrs. Hill has no picture ID. The Hills are accompanied by a friend and a local resident, James K. Hawkins, who is personally known to the notary, Miss Sims. The deed contains pre-printed acknowledgement certificate wording. All right. Is that all forming in your head? Like, is it all formalizing in your head? Like what you need to do? I know it did for me. So I'm hoping that it did it for you. Like as I was reading that, little bells were going off in my head. And then as I kept going, like they were satisfied, like I turned them off. So number 1, personal appearance. So Mr. and Mrs. Hill appear in person. We talked about that. They appeared in Arlington County, Virginia, before the notary, Miss Sims, to request a notarization. So personal appearance has been established. All right. Step 2. The deed has pre-printed acknowledgement wording, and this serves as instructions to the notary that an acknowledgement is required. It says that right here. The deed has acknowledgement wording. All right. Good to go. They appear. We know what we're doing. Let's identify. Since the signer does not know either of the Hills, satisfactory evidence of identity, an ID document, or credible identifying witness will be required. All right. So we got Mr. Hill's current driver's license to establish his identity. The notary, Miss Sims, is familiar with the driver's license format and shows no sign of altercation or counterfeiting. All right. So he's good. Mrs. Hill, however, has no ID. So the Hills' friend, James Hawkins, will serve as a credible identifying witness to identify her. The notary personally knows Mr. Hawkins, who personally knows Mrs. Hill. So that establishes the necessary chain of personal knowledge. All right. So you have to remember when we go back, if there's one credible identifying witness, they must know the notary and the signer. If the notary doesn't know the witness, then you need two credible identifying witnesses. All right. So Mr. Hawkins does not have financial interest in the transaction and he agrees to vouch for her identity. The notary tells Mr. Hawkins to raise his right hand and asks, "Do you solemnly swear that you know Judith M. Hill truly holds the identity she claims?" And he said, "Yes, I do." All right, we're good. Everybody's identified. We're moving on. Next, the notary asks each of the Hills, "Do you acknowledge that this is your signature that you signed willingly?" So it seems like they already signed the document. They both say yes. This is where the Hills make or give their acknowledgement. That's what they just did. All right. Number 5, the yes answer and the Hills demeanor also establishes their willingness to sign the document. So you can assess willingness and awareness when you're in person. It's much easier to do that because you're there. Awareness is established because the notary has engaged the Hills in conversation about the notarization. She asked the Hills questions about the documents, their identity, their acknowledgement. Since they appear to the notary to communicate coherently during the conversation, she may consider them to be able to comprehend. All right. Then number 6, the journal entry. So now the notary makes the journal entry. Since there's 2 signers, 2 lines are used or required. She records the date and time of the notarization. Remember, it was July 17th, 2022, 3:30 p.m. The type of the notarization was acknowledgment. The document date was July 16th, 2022. I don't think it said that in this scenario, but that's okay. It's telling us now. Hey, Siobhan. And then the document type was a grant deed. We knew that. The names, addresses, and telephone numbers of the signers, David and Judith Hill. So she got that from the ID and from Judith. Then the notary records how she identified each of the Hills. For Mr. Hill, she checks the box beside ID cards and records the issuing state, serial number, and expiration date of his driver's license. For Mrs. Hill, the notary checks the box besides credible witness, writes Mr. Hawkins' name and address, and have Mr. Hawkins sign his name. So here is a overview of everything we just said. So, oops. So, wait, what did that do? Oh, nothing. Okay. So, you got the date over here. You got the type, address. It was a grant deed. It was dated for the 16th. You got the first signer and the second signer. They just brought the lines down. Got her address, lines down here, credible witness down here, ID card. So you got ID card, credible witness here. And then you had James sign and write his address. Notary fee was $5. And then they signed and did their fingerprint. All right. So the notary records that she charged $5 for each signer. So 5 per signer. And finally, the Hills each sign a journal and leave a thumbprint. And then you complete the certificate. So after you've done the journal, now you can do the notarization. So this is the certificate here, and then we'll move over to the next page. She reads the certificate carefully to ensure that it's appropriate for her state and particular notarization. It is, so she begins. She writes in the venue, which it was Virginia, Arlington County. Then she writes in the date that they appear before her, which was July 17th, 2020, whatever. And then she writes her own name as the person that they appear before. And then she writes the name of the signers that personally appeared. on the next line. And then she writes how she identifies them. So it says, if one of the hills were identified through personal knowledge and the other by identification, then 2 certificates would be necessary. One certificate would indicate personally known to me as the identification method. The other proved to me on basis of satisfactory evidence. If the notary state required the use of a credible witness certificate, 2 certificates again would be needed. One for Mr. Hill, indicating personal knowledge as the identification method, and one for Mr. Hill and one for Mrs. Hill with the wording proved to me on oath of Mr. Hawkins. Okay, so let me say that again. So you need one for Mr. Hill, indicating personal knowledge, which he produced ID. I don't know why it says personal knowledge. And then one for Mrs. Hill, who had a credible identifying witness. All right. And then finally, we sign where indicated, makes the imprint of the seal, completes any additional wording. This particular certificate also asks the notary to write her commission and expiration date, a common requirement since this information is not always contained within the seal. And it says, as discussed, LS indicates the location of the seal, though these letters are not always pre-printed on a certificate. I've never seen LS. I've always just seen seal. I've never seen LS. So she signed, put her expiration date, and then she stamped. All right. And that brings us to the summary, and that brings us to the questions. So let me go back and answer Tiffany's question before we start doing the questions. So Tiffany says, do you just place your certificate behind the loan doc? So Tiffany, I always try not to use a loose certificate when I'm doing loan signing packages. The reason being is because if I put on my real estate broker hat, I know that there is a fee for recording documents. Certain documents in that package have to be recorded. Usually it's the deed or the mortgage or the note, one or the other. Those documents must be recorded. Well, the note's not notarized, so probably is the mortgage. If you attach a loose certificate to the back of that document, now you've changed the document page number from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3. And the recording stamps or the document recording is based upon the number of pages. So sometimes it's best to always just notarize on the document. And if the wording is not sufficient on the document, then what I do is I just write in or I stamp in the wording that I'm actually missing. So that is my advice. They do include a loose certificate in the packages, and I think it's perfectly okay to use them like for title documents. But if you're reviewing the documents and you see a space that's really little and you're not sure if you can notarize right in that space, I would pick up the phone and call and ask them, is this a document that's going to be recorded? Or is this a document where I can attach a loose certificate? And they'll tell you yay or nay. But for me, I try not to do it. I have a mini stamp and I try to stamp as small as I try to get it in there. And I've had to stamp in some of the tiniest little spaces, but I try to get it in there. I don't know why this camera is just not getting its life. And I don't think it's a camera. I think it's the stream. I think it's the stream. All right, here we go. Everybody ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Thumbs up if you're ready to take the exam. We need to see exam hands. Jazz fingers. We need jazz fingers for the exam. You're welcome, Tiffany. We need jazz hands for the exam. All right. No jazz hands. All right. Well, we're going anyway. So, number 1, an acknowledgment does not certify that the signer A, personally appear before the notary, B, sign the document before the notary, C, was identified by the notary, or D, admitted to the notary having signed the document. Which answer would it be? A, B, C, or D? Which one does an acknowledgement not certify? A, B, C, or D? We got a D, we got a B. Let's see. Any other answers? We got a C. Geez, we're all over the place today. We got a C. Let's see. We got another B. So this is weird. Some of the comments show up on StreamYard, some show up on YouTube. So now we got an A, we got a B, we got D's. I'm going to tell you the answer is B. The acknowledgement does not certify that they signed it before you. Remember that an acknowledgement can be signed months, days, hours, years before they actually bring it to you for it to be notarized. So we are not certifying that they signed it today. They signed it, but we're not certifying that they signed it today. But we are certifying they appeared before us, that we identified them, and that they admitted that it's their signature. Aha. So it was B. Y'all was all over the place on that one. B. All right, number 2. The acknowledgement is the most common notary act because A, it's an all-purpose notarization. B, it provides strong evidence that a document signature is genuine. C, it requires signers to take an oath or affirmation. Or D, it's the easiest to perform of all the acts. Which one is it? Why is an acknowledgement so common? You tell me. A, B, C, or D. Let's see who was listening. A, B, C, or D. We got a B. We got a B. We got an A. That's it? Only 2 people? Going once, going twice, another B. The answer is B. It is the most common because it provides the strongest evidence that a document signature is genuine. All right. Yep, Diana, it was B. Number 3, acknowledge means a person recognizes before a notary that A document signer is his or her own. B, a signature of another is in fact the signature of that person. C, a signature is that of his or her employer, partner, or spouse. Or D, a signature on the document is made on penalty of perjury. What does acknowledge mean? What does acknowledge means when a person recognizes that before a notary? What does that mean? I think we got an A. Another A. Another A. Oh, that's good. Yeah, put number 3A because then that helps. All right, everybody seems to have got that. Oh, wait. Read the answers again. All right. A document signature is his or her own. B, a signature of another is in fact the signature of that person. C, a signature is that of his or her employer, partner, or spouse. Or D, a signature on the document is made on penalty of perjury. And I think everybody got this one correct. So we're just, yep, the answer is A. Answer is A. Their acknowledge means it's their signature. All right. The date of the acknowledgement on the notary certificate, A, always coincides with the document's date of signing. B, may coincide with or follow the document's date of signing. C, may precede or coincide with the document's date of signing. Or D, may precede or follow the document's date of signing. That's a little tricky. Which one is it? I think I know. I'm going to check the answer on this one. So which one is it on this one? What number was this? 4? Okay. Ooh, wait. Oh. Okay. Yeah. This is a tricky question. I had to look at the answer and then I had to think about it. So I'll explain it to you because I think we probably all got this wrong. The one I was thinking before was C. C is not the correct answer. This is a tricky one. So the answer on this one is B, because you have to remember that we can't notarize or stamp a document before the actual date of the document, right? Because the document didn't exist. How do we notarize it before the document's date? And then we can't, but we can stamp the document on the day. So that's coinciding with the date of the document or following the date of the document. Because remember, they can sign the document at any time and then bring it to you to get notarized. So our date just has to be after the date of the signing, the document's date. Yeah, they got you. So D is may precede or follow. So the reason why D is wrong, because you can't precede the date of the document. Yeah. You can't precede it. You can coincide and you can follow the document date, but you can't go before the document date. So I picked C, thinking, didn't even think about proceed. So yeah, that was a tricky one. Yeah, that was a tricky one for all of us. So we all learned something there. All right. I thought it meant that the acknowledgement could be done before because it just justifies their signature. No, they can sign before you come and get the notarization, and then they verify their signature. But you can't notarize the document before the document date. So if the date of the document is today, Wednesday, September 21st, I can't notarize on September 20th, 2021. So I couldn't have notarized yesterday and the document is dated for today. You understand what I'm saying? If they sign the document in front of you, then that's coinciding with the date of the document. So if they have a document dated for today, the 21st, it has nothing to do with their signing date. It has everything to do with the date of the document. So this question has nothing to do with when they signed it. It just has to do with when you stamp it and what the date of the document is. So they can sign it at any time, either before you or after you. So it's just the date of the document and when you stamp it. That is what we're talking about. So you can't stamp the document before it's even created or it's dated. You get what I'm saying? You can't stamp it on the 20th and it's dated for the 21st. Can't do that. All right. I hope everybody gets it. So moving on. With a short form acknowledgement certificate, the notary the notary is not required to identify the signer. B, the signer is not required to appear before the notary. C, the notary certificate is filled in by the signer. Or D, the notary has the same duties as with a longer certificate. So which answer is number 5? I'm going to check it, but I think I know the answer to this. Yeah, that's right. So number 5. What answer would be for number 5? 1D. We got a D. We just got 1D. We got 2 Ds. 2 Ds. I'll just tell you the answer is D. Save everybody the suspense. The answer is D on that one. All right. Number 6. A corporate acknowledgement certificate is required when A person signs for a corporation as an as an officer or agent. B, a person signs a document that will be sent to a corporation. C, articles of incorporation are signed and notarized. And D, a person signs a document while in the corporate environment. So when is the corporate acknowledgement certificate required? A, B, C, or D? A, B, C, or D? We got 1A. Yep, we got another A. All right. Going, gone. The answer definitely is A. It's when a person is signing for a corporation as an officer or an agent. All right. Number 7. Documents signed by a person in a representative capacity require an acknowledgement certificate that A, adapts to any person or entity represented. B, always specifies that the signer is under oath. C, specifies who or what the signer is representing. Or D, describes documentary proof of the signer's status. So, documents signed by a person in a representative capacity require an acknowledgement certificate that which one? It adapts. It always specifies the signer's under oath. It specifies who and what the signer is representing. Or D, it describes the proof that the signer presented. Which one would that one be? A, B, C, or D? We got a C from Diana. We got a C. Anybody else? No one else is taking a stab. The answer definitely is C on this one. The certificate has to acknowledge or specify who or what the signer is actually representing. Right. You're right, Tiffany. All right. Last one. The wording in acknowledgement certificates must substantially comply with the prescribed statutory wording of A, the statement where the document is created. B, the state where, did I say statement? The state where the document is recorded. D, the state where the document is signed. What did I say? D? C, the state where the document is signed. Or D, the state where the document is notarized. I think there was a Freudian slip there. So A, the state where the document is created. B, where the state where the document is recorded. C, the state where the document is signed. Or D, the state where the document is notarized. So which one is where a certificate must substantially comply with the prescribed statutory wording? Which answer? A, B, C, or D. And they're all this whole sentence and answer is a tongue twister. We got a D from Diana, a D from Deborah, D from Tiffany. Yep, the answer is D. So it's where it's notarized. That's what matters. And I just thought of something. I'm going to give you a bonus. All right. So here's the bonus. The first person to answer number 10 will get a $5 Starbucks card from me. And go. I'm not reading the question. Go. Number 10. Oh, wait. May not have the book. Okay. No, you should be able to see the book. Just go. Number 10. First person. The first person to positively get that one correct will get a $5 Starbucks card from me. If you want to take a stab, there was 3 things that a certificate, an acknowledgement certificate acknowledges. What were those 3 things? What were those 3 things? No one's going to take a stab at it? All right. So I'm going to wait. Nope. That's not it, Rachel. That's not it. Anyone else? Anyone else? Tiffany? It must be 3 things. There's 3 things, Tiffany. You only got 1, so you got to have 3. Nope. Nope. None of those. None of those. All right. Nobody got the card this time. We'll do it next time. Let me show you the answer. Let me show you the answer. It's back here. It's right here. So you almost had it, Tiffany. Personal appearance, positive ID, acknowledgement of the signature. So there was like bits and pieces of it. Rachel had one part. So those are the 3 things for an acknowledgement. So when you're explaining acknowledgement to a client, when they need to choose an acknowledgement or a jurat, that's how you describe it. It just means personally appear, positive ID, and acknowledgement of signature. All right. So that brings us to the end of chapter 8. So next week, we're going to be going over oaths, affirmations, and jurats. So you don't want to miss that. And let's see. I'm back. Hello, I'm back. So this was a fun one. Definitely eye-opening. I actually learned a thing. So I hope that this was helpful for you. And now we have come to the time, the part of the live where we do Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. It can be a question about anything that is related to being a notary. You can ask a question. Just shoot. So whatever you have, turn that off. Whatever you have, if you have any questions, go for it right now. Any questions tonight? My light got really, really, really low because I just turned off another light. Yeah. Any questions? Yes, it was very helpful, Diana. Oh no. Don't do that. You get the echo. Sorry. Yeah. So, any questions? Any questions? No? All right. Well, I'll see you guys back here again. Oh, here we go. We got a question. So, Deborah wants to know, would I recommend beginning with Ron to get experience as a new notary? It doesn't matter. If you are technically savvy, meaning you can navigate your way around a computer, then being a Ron is a good way to start out. It doesn't really matter. General notary work is general notary work. Now, I'll say for loan signing, you should do those in person before you venture out to do them on Ron, because they don't go quite the same way as they do when you're online. And I think that you need to get more of a personal, hands-on experience with um, the documents before you actually do them on Ron. So, but for just general notary work, absolutely go for it. You're going to get, it's going to be the same no matter what. The only difference would be is when you're doing wills, power of attorneys, advanced directives, those type of things. You have to make sure that the person is not a vulnerable adult, and that is in the notary primer. um that's the only exception. So you have to make sure that you're abiding by those laws. And a lot of the platforms don't have them. Like they don't know them for Florida, and they don't have them. So I would say go for it though. You said about, oh no, what'd they say? You said they sent it back. What happened? What? Oh gosh. Okay, I'll check my messenger after this is over. All right. So Rachel says, I had a New Jersey notary ask me to change the wording of a California affidavit acknowledgement. She feels comfortable crossing out the state's verbiage and entering her own states. You never change or alter any document, right? The certificate of notarization belongs to you. So if the certificate does not meet the wording that is required in your state, you can change it. The document itself, that part, we wouldn't change. We don't have any reason to change that. But the portion of the document where we actually notarize, that belongs to us. And we need to make that fit whatever our state says must go there. So, um, yes, you can change California wording and make sure that it fits Florida wording. So as long as you have the 9 requirements for the state of Florida, and I'm going to share that with you guys just so you can see it. Hold on, I'm going to share it with y'all because I made a new one. It's on my website. But I'm going to share it with you. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up. I got to find it. Oh, here it is. Now I gotta put it over here. Hold on. And I gotta share my screen. Here we go. I'm gonna show it to you right now. Boom. Here it is. So let me move this. So as long as your notary certificate has these 9 things, the venue, the date, the description of the act, which means either they personally appeared or they was online. Or yes, personally, no. The act is acknowledgement, jurat, copy certification, oath of affirmation. That's the description of the notary act. Signer's printed name, method of identification. This is where they personally appear or were online. The form of ID, your signature, the notary's printed name always has to be below your signature, and then your seal. So as long as the certificate has those 9 things, it does not matter what else is on there. So that's how it works. All right. Tiffany says, I had a client that wanted me to notarize a document for a building owner building electrical panel. Would that be a different certificate? Was the client the owner? Was the client the owner? I don't know. I don't, it would depend on what the certificate says. If the certificate has him signing in another capacity, then that's it. It's really all about just reading the certificate. Oh, if they want a list of service provider. Did you write any on? Did you put any on there at all, Diane? Did you write any of them? All right. Tiffany says, also, what about notarizing building permits? Does it require different certificates? The certificate would be on the document. If the certificate is not on the document, you need to ask them whether they want a jurat or an acknowledgement. We don't make that up. They tell us what should be there. If it has to be notarized, 9 times out of 10, they'll put the information, their certificate, on the document for us to notarize. We typically don't have to guess. But if there's no language there, they need to tell us what document. The certificate has nothing, the types of certificate have nothing to do with the actual document. It just only has anything to do with how a person is signing. Are they signing as an individual? Are they representing someone else? Are they representing a corporation, a partnership, a trust, an estate? That's all the certificate is doing. It doesn't change the dot with the document. It represents how a person is signing or how a person is identified. Are they using credible witness? That's what that is. So you said, so yes, you said yes. Yeah, the language should be on the document. Oh, you put notarize. Huh. Interesting. Maybe you should call them. Maybe you should call them and ask them, because I specifically remember on my application that I wrote notarize and one notary. You can't sign up for one notary or notarize until you get the RON approval. So it's putting the cart before the horse anyway. So I would call them and ask them, Diane, like, what specifically were they looking for? That you intend to sign up with notarize, and you are starting the process. You started the process, and that you're waiting for the RON approval commission. Like, you can't sign up for any of them until you got it. You don't need to what, Reggie? You don't need to what? You don't need to what, Reggie? You don't need to put down anything. I put down notarize and one notary. So I'm wondering if the person who looked at the application did not know what the company notarize is. That could be a possibility. They thought you just put notarize, like, I'm just going to notarize. So they may have thought that that notarize wasn't a company. So maybe write on there one notary. I know you don't need to, Reggie, because you can't physically sign up until you have your approved RON. But they just want to know a list of companies that you plan to use. So Diane, I would add to that one notary and put down e-notary on call. Those are other ones that you can sign up for. Put blue notary. Just put a list of them, and that way they have it. I'm thinking that they thought that notarize was like you just saying, oh, I'm just going to notarize. And they didn't know that that was a company. Because that makes absolutely no sense why they would have returned that. So I would call them. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking they did. So I would call them. Yeah, call them and say, what the heck? So any other questions tonight? Oh, I got to get up close. All right. Any other questions for me tonight? It's 9. I got to go. Your girl's sleepy. So catch us next Wednesday at 7:30. If I'm not going to be there, I try my best to put it up. Last week was an anomaly. I had to rush out and go. So I hope everybody's enjoying the book club so far. And we'll keep going until we get to the end. Oh, I closed the book. I didn't put my thing there. So we'll keep going until we get to the end. And I will see you guys next Wednesday. Bye.